Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? This is ZaZa Ali. Today is Saturday, January 4th, 2025. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. I'm doing really well. This subject is yoga demonic. Is something that I have been wanting to talk about and address for a long time now, because this is something that I constantly get, messages and see negative things being said online on social media, etc., by way of this topic. So I wanted to add a little ZaZa Ali perspective to the conversation. Before I get into that, this message and all videos between now and February 7th are brought to you by the contribution to my expansion campaign. My goal is to sell 500 annual membership passes for $50 each. The regular rate is $200. That is a 75% reduction in cost. You will have access to all of my content on my membership channel for 12 months. There will be no renewal, no subscription, and it breaks down to $4.16 a month. And I will be sharing all of my content, all of my meetings, gatherings, challenges, etc., with you guys publicly, so you can see the value in it. And hopefully by the end of this campaign, I will have, not hopefully, for sure, we are going to attract and manifest 500 people that believe in me and that are willing to support my endeavors for my textbook, Ancient People. I love it that you guys find value in my messages. I would really love it if you would support my efforts. So the link to purchase the pass or contribute any amount is in the description. And real quick, I want to remind you guys that on Saturday, January 25th, 2025, hang on, let me make sure. Okay. On January 25th, 2025, I'm going to be speaking live in Los Angeles at Soul Folks in Leimert Park in LA. I said that twice. Part one will be a reading of Ancient People. We'll have an intermission with a delicious plant-based meal. And then part two, I will be doing my lecture presentation, A Divine New World Order. So some of the stuff you guys are hearing me and seeing me talk about is going to be the stuff that I'm going to be focused on during that conversation. Really excited and looking forward to it. I'll put the link in the description for the tickets as well. And then lastly, I hope everybody knows that I am a self-published author, and I have 4 workbooks included in a metaphysics workbook bundle package that you can get on my website. Change Your Mind from Lack to Abundance, The Science of Self, Volume 1, The Power of the Mind, The Science of Sex, and Keys to Womanhood, What Every Young Lady Should Know. So yeah, you can get information on that in the description of the link below as well, or in the link below description as well. I'm thinking about going live tomorrow. I'm working on this series that I'm gonna post called Hollywood, the finale, 2020 to 2024. I think I should maybe change 2024 to 2025 now, but I'm working on it and I'm thinking about going live tomorrow afternoon. So don't quote me on that. But if I feel like I've made enough traction with what I have put together, then I will go live sometime in the afternoon. But back to the conversation. Let me just make sure okay, I'm sharing my page correctly. Yes. All right, cool. So this topic is yoga demonic. I'm going to try to run through it really quickly. I know you guys like shorter form content, and I am definitely going to be putting plenty of that out. But I also, in topics like this, and when it's something that I want to talk about and that I'm interested in, for me, I'm more prone to like wanting to paint a full picture. And so sometimes you can't do that in 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, particularly with a topic like this. So yeah, is yoga demonic? Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like the video. I also am going to put the link to my Instagram and Facebook in the description as well. So the reason why this topic is important to me is because a lot of people are cracking under pressure right now. And a lot of people are really struggling to maintain balance in their mental, spiritual, and emotional, selves within themselves in those areas, right? And we're living in a world that is constantly inundating us with negativity and with, chaos and dysfunction. And there's mass programming going on. When I use the dates 2020 to 2024 for that video, it's for a very specific reason. I don't think we really realize, most of us, if not all of us, are dealing with a certain level of PTSD just from the trauma of that experience. Whether you saw the play from the beginning, which I did, and had to deal with the repercussions of living in a world where the majority of people didn't, right? And so the family dynamic and all of that stuff, and realizing the facade of this world just really, kind of came from behind the scene. Like I've been saying, Satan came from behind the curtain in 2020. Yes, they 100% did. So for me, talking about yoga and having this conversation is important, because not only with yoga, but I want to, give us resources and tools and a perspective in the way that we look at things, especially things that are in the collective consciousness, um, so that these things can add value to your life. And yoga has added a tremendous amount of value and clarity in my life. So that's why I'm making this video to defend it. And yoga, as with anything, as with every religion, as with every institution of learning, as with every industry, every corporation, whatever you bring to the table, whether it's your higher self or your lower nature, that is what is going to be magnified in your practice or in your line of study or in your line of spirituality. So that's why you can have, an ongoing um, um, continuity of quote unquote yoga cults, where this same story gets repeating itself, where, this one guy who's from India or from somewhere, who was, well versed in the art, maybe not, but he ended up going off to some faraway land and taking 300 or 400, white student, college age students with him, and then all of a sudden all hell broke loose, right? That's the ego in full throttle on a whole different level, though, and mass energy harnessing, by the way. So that happens in those environments, and then it happens in, the Christian church as well. You look at the situation with the Catholic Church, the ongoing continuity of traumatizing and terrorizing children. It's kind of like built into the fabric of this institution, and everybody knows it. And none of the other religious, entities, be it, I mean, I would feel like Christians would have the most responsibility, because that is their, a branch of their faith per se. But then most of the religions don't really talk about that. Like, when do we really hear any backlash? Right. So you have that. I did, in one of my recent headline news, was talking about Islamic countries and pinpointing which ones, and one, highlighting the nations that are, identified as Islamic nations. And one of those nations was Afghanistan. So the point that I was making was that Afghanistan has a very long-standing lewd, and what's the word I'm looking for? Despicable and disparaging history of, you know, misuse and abuse of children, boys in particular, right? So whether we're talking about, all of the different branches of spirituality, because I'm going to read you some of the negative stuff that's about to be said about Hinduism, all of the different branches of spirituality, religion, historical context, how we process and how we translate and transmute all of these teachings is based on our vibrational resonance, how we see the world, our intention, and whether we're operating predominantly in our higher self or our lower nature. If you're a slave, and I only say predominantly because none of us are like always on point, right? But if you're a slave to your lower nature, then yeah, things are going to be difficult for you. I don't care how many times a day you practice, or, or pray, or etc. So indulgence and discipline is critical in every aspect of any spirituality, any religion. So these are some of the things that are alluded to as dangers in terms of yoga and Christians practicing yoga. Idolatry. By engaging in spiritual activities like yoga, meditation, or chanting mantras, rooted in Hinduism or Buddhism, some Christians worry that they may be committing idolatry. Excuse me. These Eastern faiths involve concepts about the divine and paths to enlightenment that clearly differ from biblical teachings. Occult influences. Throughout the Old and New Testament, occult practices like divination, sorcery, witchcraft, and magic are repeatedly forbidden. Yoga emerged from a context permeated with occult elements, though the degree to which modern yoga retains these aspects varies. Either way, the gospel calls us to separate ourselves from such influences. And then New Age versions. There are currently more liberal versions of yoga focused purely on physical poses and breathing techniques. However, there are also New Age Christian yoga blendings gaining popularity which incorporate unbiblical ideas and mystical experiences. Christians looking into yoga options would be wise to thoroughly investigate what's being taught and practice to detect occult influences. It goes on to say there's also a chance of opening deceptive spiritual doorways. One concern is that engaging in something like yoga or Eastern styles of mystical meditation can potentially open receptive doorways to the demonic realm. When you involve yourself in religious practices outside of God's protection and boundaries, you'll become vulnerable to demonic distortions of truth, light, and supernatural experiences. Additionally, the aims of yoga and Eastern meditation contrast starkly with the relationship with Jesus Christ and life of the Holy Spirit. The end goal of yoga is an inward journey of self realization and tapping into all the God within us all to achieve our enlightenment, peace, and divinity on our own merits apart from Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Now, let me just say this because I know I have to say it because I know how sensitive people are when you talk about religion or their religion. I don't have a religion, but I respect and value aspects of them all. And you will continuously in my content hear me reference something from Islam or hear me reference something from Christianity or the Bible, I should say, in different schools of thought. My last name is Ali, right, which is an Arabic name, being belonging to all. And then my first name is ZaZa, which is a Hebrew word, right? So I mean, Zaza means belonging to all. I'm sorry, and Ali means the exalted of God. Pardon me. So, but I'm saying that to say I intentionally chose those words for those names for a specific reason. And then I'm also saying this because, I find value in all of the scriptures. Again, it's to take the best and leave the rest part. And the most important thing, because I've read the Bible at certain periods and couldn't, really grasp certain things or relate to it. And then I read it at other periods where it made brilliant, perfect sense, right? Same thing with the Quran, same thing with Taoism and all of these other schools of thought. They all have value to me. So you don't need to be in the comments arguing the point of why this is blasphemy, et cetera, et cetera. I'm never going to make an argument only from one book. So if that's your vantage point where it's your book or no way, then, I respect that. It's all love. So these are the passages in the Bible that they are referencing that, sort of tell you where God is telling you not to do yoga and practices such as yoga. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to read the red parts. Don't become like the people of this world, right? Um, the Spirit says clearly that in later times, some believers will desert the Christian faith. They will follow spirits that deceive, and they will believe the teachings of demons, which is they're alluding to this being yoga, right? Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, is a roaring lion walking about. Avoid godless, foolish discussions with those who oppose you with their so-called knowledge. Some people have wandered from the faith of such foolishness. Now I want to go back a page real quick because it says, when you involve yourself in religious practices outside of God's protection and boundaries, you'll become vulnerable to demonic distortions of truth, light, and supernatural experiences. I find that fascinating because between 2021 and 2023, or the end of 2023, last I checked, the majority of Christians and Muslims, and I say that because we're having a conversation about religion, but the majority of human beings on this planet who are of these different faiths took that shot. So obviously God's protection is still relative in terms of where we are right now in the bigger scheme of things. But, you know, why haven't the institutions of religion poured enough knowledge of self and proper understanding of what we call God into the flock, if you will, so that people are knowledgeable and aware and know how to make the right choices and decisions when Satan comes knocking at their door? And how many Christian, and I'm only singling Christian out because this is a very strong sentiment within the Christian world. I've had people address me with this continuously. It's just the first time I ever like actually did a video about it, because I'm always talking about yoga, of course, and will continue to do so. And so every now and then I have somebody send me an email or post on my video and tell me that this is demonic and that, you know, I need to turn to my person, Jesus, my personal savior, Jesus Christ, or, you know, that language. You can't put a Christian name tag on it and call it Christian, talking about yoga, people wanting to do yoga. Yoga separates you from Jesus and opens up your body to evil influences and spiritual attacks. More and more professing Christians are departing from the faith and doing things that God hates. Put on the full armor of God and walk by the Spirit so you can discern the will of God. So, again, going back to the point that I just made, going back to the super churches found all over the United States of America, I'm talking about millions, tens of millions of dollars of fabulous, beautiful architectural representations. TD Jakes had a whole clinic outside in the parking lot of his beautiful institution of religion where they were handing out needles. Excuse me, they were handing out free shots. So, you know, I just find it so interesting that there's not a lot of self-awareness within the Christian, the frequency that represents. And I'm also saying this because the elitist sort of, the anti everybody but Christian sentiment is really starting like kick up dust, and I don't get it. I mean, I understand a lot of these people rock with Trump, so I understand, I get that part, but I also hear, people that look like me, or that are becoming more boisterous in their platform forms in terms of promoting Christianity, excuse me, as a religion. And for me, the real concept of Christianity is about Christ consciousness, not about worshiping somebody who allegedly lived 2,000 years ago. There's been many Jesuses, in my opinion. We're talking about a frequency, a bandwidth of consciousness that's so high that you can come into the world, and with that vibrational resonance and with the spirit of the Most High and with the right proper teachings, that you can change the trajectory of human consciousness. So there have been many. Was there a particular one that we're talking about in terms of 2,000 years ago? Probably. And he definitely didn't look like Brad Pitt. But should we be worshiping somebody from 2,000 years ago while we're talking about, leading you away from God? Is it Jesus or is it God? How could Jesus be the Lord and Savior if God is God? Just some things to make you question. The people who have curious minds. I know a lot of people that listen to me are like looking for spiritual perspective on things. These are the questions we have to start asking ourselves. Is it working in the world? And of course, it's perspective, but in order to fine tune the perspective, we got to destroy the lies.
But in giving,
let me start that over.
Christianity played a major part in giving legitimacy to slavery. We say it casually, but remember that the cross came before the flag. When Christianity came, the version of Christianity that was brought to us was a Christianity where you are supposed to turn the other cheek. It was a Christianity where they make reference to Paul's letter to the Romans and say, obey your masters. You slaves, obey your masters as you would the Lord. So you can almost see an attempt to say that slavery is God ordained.
Black people wear the mark of Cain. That's in the Bible.
No, it is not. Show me where in the Bible it says that black people wear the mark of Cain. Show me that. Give me one example.
There's tons of it. Who also do slave Mormons? I mean, what about Mormons?
Yeah, you got out of the kitchen because it was getting hot. I don't blame you. You got out of the kitchen real fast. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Go into where does the Bible say that African Americans are the children of Cain? Where does the Bible say that?
Talks about the mark of Cain, and you can interpret the Bible any way you can. Lots of
No, you can't interpret the Bible any way you can. It's like honest. Well, you can do anything you want, right? Yeah, but you don't have to have a PhD in the Bible to understand that those slave owners who used the Bible to justify slavery were perverting the living lives out of it.
Did God justify slavery in Exodus 21?
No. If you carefully read Exodus 21, 1 to 11, you have two types of slavery. You have what's called indentured servitude, when someone is so poor and then he becomes a butler or his daughter becomes a maid. But according to the very law, in the seventh year, they must be set free, especially in the year of Jubilee. So no, it's not justifying slavery as you understand it today. It's talking about what they call indentured servitude. A person is so poor, he hires himself, what we would say today, as a butler or his daughter as a maid. That's actually, if you read it carefully, that's what it's saying. But in the seventh year, they'd be set free. She'd be set free. And the Jubilee, they all be set free and debts would be canceled.
Yeah.
So I'm giving fast answers. I'm trying.
Yeah, nice.
So just a few different vantage points in terms of, because again, I'm seeing this very strong, some of it's elitism, and I feel like some of it, for me, it's all about balance, right? In the same way I talked about anybody that's really, promoting the Catholic religion, the Catholic faith right now has a duty and obligation to be exposing what's happening with children in that institution. I mean, that should be off top, right? So in the sense that now the conversation about Christianity is really kind of coming to the surface, and it's us against the world, right? Or the world against us, so to speak. We cannot pretend like there is not an elitist element to Christianity, in the fabric and the fiber of the United States, particularly because they used it and the Bible to legitimize slavery. That's a fact. And not only did they use it to legitimize slavery, they also used it to keep the slaves and the mindset of the slaves in a particular program and locked in a particular frequency that is still strong and dominant in the Bible Belt of America. So again, the question, not to make this about any particular religion, we're talking about Christianity, but is the application of Christianity as a faith, as a religion, being expressed through the higher self or the lower nature? We just can't get around that concept. This woman in the middle that's talking about Black people having the mark of Cain, is she operating from her? And she probably got a cross on her chain underneath her shirt. So she's a representation of Christianity. The Christians, while we got Christians online debating, things in the Bible, you should be exposing this. And how it was used for hundreds of years to keep people away from the light, when the real true nature of any scripture of God is supposed to bring people closer to it. So I'm just saying, all of the super judgmental, this is demonic, this is this is that. Like, yeah, there's flaws in all of them. Again, you heard the numbers I just said. There's 2 billion Muslims in the world. There's 2 billion Christians in the world. There are 1.25 billion Hindus in the world and 500 million Buddhists in the world. These are the current, statistics. So the image on the screen and the image that I had in the opening statement is of Nut. Nut was the Egyptian sky goddess. We could say Kemetic, or we'll say Egyptian for the sake of the conversation. Sky goddess born of Shu, god of air, and Tefnut, goddess of water and fertility. With her brother and husband Geb, the earth she bore Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Nut is usually depicted with stars covering her body, particularly her hands and feet, which were seen as the 4 cardinal points. She was the granddaughter of the great sun god Ra, but also an important mother figure to him in many of the legends. Now, before the people that are dogmatic start talking about, see, that's proof that the women were marrying their brothers. This is not a real person. This is uh, uh, um, a spiritual avatar, if you will. This is a representation on the manifestation of what came to be our reality, the building blocks, so to speak, and using metaphors and symbology and what's the word? Not metaphors. Y'all know the word. I want to say metaphysics, but it's not metaphysics. Oh my God, this word is on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, mythology. There we go. So using mythology, they told stories about life and about the inception of life and about, different aspects of how these things came to be. And this is one of them. But the point is that the outstretch that she's doing in all of the images that we can see of her or of this divine feminine representation, she's doing the downward facing dog posture, right? And so the argument, and even the gentleman at the bottom is doing a yoga posture as well, which is going to be on a couple of other slides from this one. So, and I'm not even really too keen on making the argument. I'm not going to say I won't make the argument. I'm making the argument now, just doing the history of it in terms of where yoga started. I do know that back 4, 5,000, 6,000 years ago, a lot of these areas, from Africa, North Africa, Israel, the Middle East area, India, Saudi Arabia, a lot of those areas were all, sort of way more interconnected and very, very black and dark skinned, just different tribes, right? So we're talking about different melanated tribes that are all sort of blending and existing together. And so the argument about whether it started in Africa or whether it started in India, even though it's clear that it started in Africa, but whether it was, whether they were here or we were there, or like, there's a lot of semantics to this. And none of us should be trying to own this, is the point. We can state the facts of the history and then acknowledge, like, yeah, for me, the question is, yes, who started it? Absolutely. Y'all know I love history, but then also who's maintaining it, and who's maintaining it is very, 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 very critical. So again, you can see the yoga postures there. In Kemetic philosophy, the 42 laws of Ma'at is Kemetic spirituality, which has clear parallelisms with traditional Indian yogic philosophy, and they are a code of conduct for the practitioners. The yamas and the niyamas, the first 2 limbs of the 8-limb path of yoga that one must follow to reach enlightenment, are an example of that affinity. And you can see another image of the left in one of the Kemetic representations in the statues of another posture that's obviously a yoga posture. Just like Indian yoga, Kemetic yoga is not a religion, but a system of disciplines designed to help you achieve the highest state of consciousness possible, leading to true awakening. Kemetic yoga in its modern form, also known as African yoga, Egyptian yoga, or Smai Tawi, was created in the 1970s by Dr. Asar Hapi and Elfrid Lawrence through their research. Swai Tawi translates to the joining of the lands of Upper Kemet and Lower Kemet, or union of the 2 lands. So again, this is kind of giving us the inception. He created it as an actual, sort of modern ideology, but he built it around all of the different, sentiments in yoga that are already rooted in African spirituality and in the Netaru, so to speak, like the story of Nut, right? As well as the different aspects of the practices with the priests, priestesses, etc. And then according to the creators, there was something else I wanted to say and it just slipped my mind. Let me go back. Let me see, was it important? Yeah, he went back and took from the physical asanas, obviously, that we see in the image here, as well as some others we're going to see, and bridged the physical aspects of it and the spiritual aspects of it into an actual teaching. Dr. Asar Hapi. Kemetic yoga is a healing and regenerative yoga system that is characterized by a series of geometrically progressive postures that creates alignment of the spinal column and corrects defects in the skeletal muscular system in order to relieve stress, increase blood circulation, nutrient and oxygen supply to bodily systems, and to allow internal life force energy and cerebral spinal fluid to flow more efficiently and abundantly throughout the entire body. Now, does that sound demonic? And I'm not only saying this because I'm looking at it from the different vantage points. I'm an ongoing yoga practitioner. Eventually, I'm gonna do the hours and get my certification to be an instructor. But yoga plays a very, very large part in my life, in my health and well-being, and it's why I stay so young. One of the reasons. The teachings of I hope I'm saying that right, Smai, Tawi, and Kemet was derived from the meditations and insights of the temple sages. In the 1970s, Dr. Hobby and his team studied, translated, and interpreted hieroglyphic texts of ancient Egypt and developed this philosophy and practice, inspired by the ancestors that built one of the first and most prosperous civilizations. And of course, you can see Ma'at on the left-hand side, who was also a spiritual or a deity of some sort, representing balance and truth and justice. She's also doing a yoga posture. So I want to show you guys a quick video of a sister practicing Kemetic yoga. And go ahead and look at the screen if you want to screenshot this. This is the name of her video, Mat Ka Firehawk Demonstration Instructional. And I'm just going to play a couple of minutes of this just so we can get a vantage point on the vibration and how it looks.
First position, check to see that they're nice and level. Deep breath in. As you exhale, twist your body out the waist to your left. As you inhale, turn your wrists so that your palms face forward. On your exhale, bend both elbows into top position. Again, check on your peripherals to make sure the elbows are up nice and high level with the shoulders. Deep breath in. On your exhale, turn your head and neck over your right shoulder. Feeling the squeeze in your core, feeling the need to plant your feet. Inhale, bring the eyes back over your center. And as you exhale, turn the head and neck over your left shoulder behind you. Inhale, bring the head back to center, and then follow by twisting the whole body from your core back to the front. As you exhale, you're bringing two palms together in front of you, taking your time to feel the force of energy between the palms. They connect in front of the chest. Now, inhale, raise the right toe up, bend the left knee slightly. Exhale as you bend the knee even more, crescent shape with the hands as you shape them in front of the face and extend them out towards the toe.
I'm going to stop it right there. That right there, that posture that she's doing, that is not easy. I can assure you. I can feel my whole body trying to pull that posture off right there. Like, that is not easy right there. But yeah, I just think the whole vibration and frequency in the movement, it is very obvious from the imagery that I've looked at a lot of hieroglyphics and, different imagery from ancient Kemet and throughout the years, and like the movement and the arms and the legs and all of it, it really kind of is very, it matches the frequency and the energy of what I see in the glyphs. So I thought that was dope. Y'all can go back and check out our content. If you're interested in learning about Kemetic yoga, you can definitely check that out. I also wanted to reference the article that I read. Hold on, let me pull this up. This was a really good article on yogajala.com, Kemetic yoga / Kemetic yoga. I only put a very short amount of it in here, but it's a very in-depth video, and there's videos in there of different Kemetic yoga practices. If you guys want to go and check that out, look into it deeper, or you can screenshot this and then pull that website up. And so here's some of the images that Dr. Muata Ashby has, sort of recreated and done renditions of, as you saw the sister in the video. He is a very prolific teacher. I have several of his books when it comes to Kemetic yoga. This is based on the Egyptian exercise workbook. Does that say? Workout workbook. I think that's what that says. The writing on the bottom of the screen is small, but you can see all of the different images and representation, which are super similar to a lot of the regular post yoga postures. And then there are some that are a little bit different, right? And in the ones that are different, you can definitely see the Kemetic influence, especially the Ma'at here, right? And then this one as well. But yeah, a lot of these postures are all things that I practice on a regular when I practice yoga anyway. This one is, a little bit different. That one's a little bit different. Maybe not. So yeah, and then these are the original images that he put a collage together where, these different postures were already being reflected in the hieroglyphics thousands, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years ago, if not more than that, right? So you can see the wheel pose here. You can see the Sphinx here, which Sphinx is a very integral part of the whole yoga practice. You can see down dog there. You can see all these different images and representations. So when we talk about where yoga actually started from, it's obviously predominantly thought of to be India. Obviously, this is information that kind of broadens our mind and perspective on that. But for me, the argument is not really that big of a deal, because I believe at that point in time, the high societies in Indian, the ancient Indian cultures were intermingling and, and prominent in the high societies in, Kemet and in Africa, right? And so it wasn't so much about who started it at that point, and it was about, the cultural benefit of it being in the benefit of it being a part of the culture. And again, today, the maintaining of it is critical. So this is why it's important to have this conversation, right? Because it's one thing to say these things started in Africa, yeah, but are we maintaining the vibration of the original intention that our ancestors set for us with these spiritual sciences? Because this is spiritual science. When you get into the intricacies of the practice of yoga, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Okay, so can we just run that back again real quick? It's a very short video. So you can see the sacred geometry playing out in the physical body. Just to have a physical vantage point on what exactly is. There's something deeper, a deeper spiritual resonance of frequency that's taking place when, not only when you're doing these postures, but most importantly, that your breath is in alignment with the movement. So this is sacred geometry in human form. Does that feel demonic? I don't know. This guy has his accent is kind of thick, so you'll have to listen in close to what he says. But you know, it's not that bad. But I just want you be mindful so you can hear, because this is important too. Yeah, of course. Computer will make me look silly. Thank you.
In this video, let's explore the science of yoga. The word yoga comes from the Sanskrit word which means to unite. Therefore, yoga means union. It is aligning the geometry of our body to the geometry of the universe or creation itself. Well, if we observe in nature, we find everything having a certain geometrical pattern encoded within it, like flowers, fruits, as well as galaxies. Even our body is a living proof to show that we are geometry in human form. Every shape has an energy pattern encoded within it and is vibrating at a certain frequency. The more symmetric the pattern is, the higher frequency it is vibrating at. Also, cymatics is a proof to show us how matter tuned to a certain frequency forms a geometric pattern. Now coming to yoga, we see that each pose in yoga has a certain geometric shape, and every pose that is geometric and that is in perfect symmetry has a high frequency encoded within it. Therefore, when you do yoga, you are creating these geometrical shapes within your body through these yoga poses, and in doing so, you tap into the frequency of the energy pattern that's encoded within that shape and you become aligned. For this reason, it's always said that our body is a temple to reach these higher states of consciousness, and all you need to do is to tap into the right frequency, and yoga is a key to achieve that. Having said that, follow for more.
So he mentioned tapping into the frequency of the energy pattern. And that's probably what, you know, in the previous slides where they talked about opening yourself up to be spiritually attacked or to demons. Like maybe I could see if he had actually used that as an argument and said, yeah, look at this. They're saying that, you know, when you do these geometric shapes, that it opens up a frequency, that it opens you up to certain things. But then for the intelligent people, that would have made it more appealing. Because, like, wait a minute, what? You're telling me if I do certain postures and move my body in certain ways and in certain angles, that it'll, you know, tap me into a higher frequency, not a frequency of death and destruction and chaos and going out in the world and causing turmoil, but like, yeah, real flow. The energy flow that happens in the body when you turn your body in these different postures. It's like shaking your blood upside down. And your blood needs to be cleansed and it needs to be moved throughout the body and circulated continuously. So that's exactly what yoga is doing, as well as aligning the physical body with the breath. If you feel anxiety, whenever you feel anxiety, do a forward fold and keep your back as straight as you possibly can without rounding it. And whatever your comfort level is, like, fold into that and then breathe. Because when you're bent over, all of that stuckness, that stuck energy in your chest, when you breathe over, it completely clears the pathway. So you'll feel mad anxiety in your chest when you're standing up. And then when you do a forward fold and just start breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, you won't feel any of it. And so you can do that, stop and do that, and you feel anxiety or feel, you know, chaotic in your emotions. Stop and just do that for like 2 or 3 minutes or 10, depending on the situation. We're in 2025 now. These people are playing at a very high level. It's time for us to step our game up. That's why this conversation is necessary. All of us should have a physical practice where we are tapping into the higher self using our physical bodies. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is one of the main sort of points of emphasis when it comes to the spiritual, not just the spiritual, blending all aspects together in a cohesive way, right? And creating a sort of a foundational system called the 8 limbs of yoga. So what are the 8 limbs of yoga? The first of the 8 limbs of yoga, yama, deals with one's ethical standards and sense of integrity, focusing on our behavior and how we conduct ourselves in life. Yamas are universal practices that relate best to what we know as the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Niyama, the second limb, has to do with self-discipline and spiritual observations. Regularly attending temple or church services. Imagine that. Saying grace before meals, developing your own personal meditation practices, or making a habit of taking contemplative walks alone are all examples of niyamas in practice. I highly suggest that we all take continuous contemplative walks alone. This, asana, which is the physical part, the postures practiced in yoga, comprise the third of the 8 limbs of yoga. In the yogic view, the body is a temple of spirit, the care of which is an important stage of our spiritual growth. Through the practice of asanas, we develop the habit of discipline and the ability to concentrate, both of which are necessary for meditation. For pranayama, generally translated as breath control, this fourth stage consists of techniques designed to gain mastery over the respiratory process while recognizing the connection between the breath, the mind, and the emotions. As simplified by the literal translation of pranayama, life force extension, yogis believe that it not only rejuvenates the body but actually extends life itself. You can practice pranayama as an isolated technique, simply sitting and performing a number of breathing exercises, or integrate it into your daily hatha yoga program. And then the last 4, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. I'm not going to read those because they have much longer definitions, and I'm already almost at 50 minutes. And I didn't think, I'm always trying to be mindful of my time. So I'm going to push past this. But looking at the images now of Salat in Islam and the different poses and postures that you do in Salat, starting out from Takbir and then ending all the way in Julis down in the halfway up, forward fold, lift halfway. That's a part of the yoga practice. All of this is a part of the yoga practice, right? And then you look at the images down below and you can sort of see the correlation. So now we're talking about the Kemetic aspect of yoga. We're talking about Islam. We're talking about the East, these different traditions in Buddhism and in Hinduism that are practicing Islam, that are having an overwhelmingly positive effect on the people, the individuals, and the culture, right? Okay. These are images of, or videos of Tai Chi. And you can see that same triangular geometric shape within the bodily movements if you really just look at them, right? Same thing, just a different methodology of practice. The same thing with martial arts. We have plenty of teachings from ancient customs and spirituality and, methodologies to improve our lives that we can tap into. The question is, as with anything, whether it's religion or whether it's spirituality, these different practices, are we bringing our higher self or our lower nature to the picture? And are we willing to transmute and transform our lower nature in order to bring the higher self into the forefront? So again, we can see the sacred geometry right here being manifested. So as you can see there, the brothers practicing. Hang on, let me pause this. So as you can see there, the brothers practicing capoeira, and capoeira is a form of dance slash martial arts that was constructed by warriors who were captured and taken to different parts of South America, and in order to hide the fact that they were keeping their martial arts alive, they formulated into a form of dance. And so this imagery that you see is a version, not a version, it is capoeira, but this is one of the ways that they sort of they kept it alive, and it's still alive to this day. So again, you can see the sacred geometry in the body language, with the kicks, with the angles, right? So this is sacred science, and this is ancient teachings. And what if these are the things that can help us to tap into the God frequency that we're all running around here talking about are evil because somebody said it was in the Bible, and it ain't even in the Bible. More than 51 million Americans experienced chronic pain in 2021 alone, according to CDC reports that analyze data from the National Health Interview Survey. This staggering number represents 20.9% of the United States population. What can help with chronic pain? Yoga. I had an ongoing knee injury, my right knee, because I wore high heels when I was in my early 20s, when I was working in the corporate world. I wore high heels nonstop for like 3 years straight, from sun up to sundown. And eventually, once I slowed down, I started having major issues with my right knee, issues with my right foot, and issues with my left ankle. And it was an ongoing thing to the point where I ended up having to go to the foot doctor. So long story short, I was, already familiar with yoga, but I turned really, 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 really leaned into yoga and was able to heal all those issues. I know I had carpal tunnel syndrome at a certain point, because my sister had surgery from it, and a friend of mine had surgery from it in both of her arms. So I knew all of the symptoms. I also knew the ramifications of the surgery, and I knew I wasn't going to do that. So I used yoga and I healed myself, and I don't have any pain in my wrists at all. So again, how could this be demonic? Anxiety disorders are the most common mental health concern in the world, affecting millions of people. Over 40 million adults in the US have an anxiety disorder, which is about 19.1% of the population. About 31% of US adults will experience an anxiety disorder at some point in their lives. I don't like mixing the word anxiety and disorder together, because you built a world that gives people anxiety. How is this a disorder? If anything, you have the disorder. So you see the language, the mental health, and that, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like that. You created a world that makes people have to live under extreme high stress and chaos, and living in debt and working check to check and barely making ends meet, et cetera, et cetera. And then you call it a disorder. Isn't that just fascinating? Basic facts about depression. Major depression is one of the most common mental illness. Here we go with that word again. Affecting more than 8% or 21 million of American adults each year. 15% of youth, or 3.7 million ages 12 to 17, are affected by major depression. How is it possible that there are 3.7 million children, and this number is obviously probably high now? These are probably the oldest. The CDC and all these places really do major statistics every 4 years. This is one of the things that really irritated me when I was really in my research, looking into certain things. This is something I find, like, yeah, they only put out the numbers every 4 years. How, Sway? You know how much happens in 4 years? How is it possible that we have 3.7 million children from age 12 to 17? That's supposed to be the prime of your life. And the numbers of anxiety are probably way higher than this. So I'm just saying, because somebody listening to me right now got chronic pain, and somebody listening to me right now got anxiety and are dealing with depression, and you're probably going to church every Sunday. That's what's so fascinating about it all. So it's time to step up the ante. It's time to step our game up. And I have dealt with anxiety over the course of my life, because my life was constructed in a way with my family situation and whatnot. Like, yeah, I was adulting way before it was time for me to be adulting, and having to make sure everything was done on my behalf. And in this world, yeah, that comes with some stress and strain. This is the acupressure chart on the left, acupuncture on the right. They're really, the same thing, pretty much, just kind of different modalities. One of them is dealing with moving energy through the body using the fingers and different pressure points. And then the other one is using needles. And I also got, at certain points when I was having, a lot of pain in my foot, I would get acupressure or acupuncture in my foot and then in my wrist at a certain point too. So it was a part of my sort of healing program to continuously be getting acupressure, especially when I had pain. And there is a wonderful Chinese herbalist here in Gardenia, California, where anytime I have any sort of physical ailments, a lot of times when I have issues, pain in my ankles, it's because of the shoes I'm wearing. Like I know I shouldn't wear Pumas because they're not really good for my feet, but I love Pumas. You know what I mean? So if I wear them too much and I'm not doing yoga, then yeah, I'll start to have pain. And so that's another thing. The kind of shoes that we wear is affecting, the hip to ankle ratio, the knees, the quality of, how you're supporting your body. It's all connected. If I do yoga 4 or 5 times in a week, my body will feel light as air. I won't feel any pain. Doesn't even matter what kind of shoes I'm wearing. And then the flip side of that is if I'm not practicing regularly and then I'm wearing high heels one day or something. I don't wear them a lot, but every now and then I do. Like, yeah, my body feels it. So these are the meridian points of the body. We're talking about the way that the energy moves throughout the system. This is a part of the science of yoga. Okay, everything that we're supposed to learn is not in the Bible. Everything that we're supposed to learn is not in the Quran, right? There's so much, like, just the human body, just looking all at all of this. And this is only talking about the meridian points. We ain't even talking about the heart. We ain't talking about the lungs. We're not talking about the uterus. We're not talking about any of that. So it's wise of us to be wise about how we're taking in information and like actually being students of life and students of the world again. It's time for us to go to the next level. We need healers in all of these areas. I'm talking about the Chinese herbalist. I can go over there and get acupuncture for $40. And they're not trying to sell me nothing. Just help me. We need people. We need access to healers that are in all of these different spaces. That's why yoga is one of my primary focuses, as well as meditation and breath work as well, because breath work is critical, whether you're doing yoga or not. And last but certainly not least, you see your girl on screen throughout the years. These are all older pictures. Obviously, my hair is long, but just kind of seeing me at different stages of my practice. You can see the one on the bottom right. I was practicing a Kemetic yoga pose, and I had the Kemetic yoga shirt on. So that's really why I wanted to get a picture of that. But yeah, again, yoga has been a very strong source of strength for me. I've had times when I was in a difficult space and I had to force myself to go to class, and I would, be in shavasana and be in tears. You know what I mean? So practice for a whole hour, and then your body finally feels feels relief, where you feel safe enough to just, express your emotions. We are so emotionally pent up and on edge and walking on pins and needles. We have to have practices that bring us to the center. We have to have practices that embellish discipline and willpower. We have to have practices when shit around us is getting crazy, that we can go in a room and close the door and be able to tap back into the God frequency. All right. So I just been a minute since I've been wanting to have this conversation about yoga, to kind of bring some proper balanced perspective to this conversation as a yogi, and eventually I'll be a yoga instructor. And I'm always a student of the teachings and the ideology and the best part, right? Because again, some people are coming into yoga and applying that lower nature energy. It's everywhere. So taking the best part and then using that and expanding that to grow and to be better and to do better. If you have chronic pain, you can search on YouTube chair yoga. And then let's say you have chronic pain in your shoulders, search chair yoga shoulder pain. Right? If your body is flow is okay, where you can actually stand up and practice, then search beginner yoga for beginners and just start there. And then there's all sort of different levels. And so there you have it. ZaZaAli.com is my website. Info@ZaZaAli.com is my email address. I'll put all the links in the description for the things I talked about at the beginning of the video. Thank you guys. If you actually listen to me talk for an hour about yoga and about spiritual sciences, then y'all are most definitely my tribe. Because I know when I talk about certain things, you know, the numbers are lesser, but this is the stuff I'm interested in, right? And so it may not be a banger number wise, but this is definitely something that I feel like will add value to you guys that actually sit and watch through all the way to the end. All right. Namaste, or should I say, yeah, namaste and peace and love.